Good morning. Buenos días. How are you? My name is Luis Miguel Echegaray. You don't have to remember all of that. But I'm with Sports Illustrated. I'm the co-host of Planet Football at SI, and I'm the director of Latino and Hispanic content there. And I am extremely excited for this panel, for this incredible panel, which will basically be a conversation about the evolution, the meaning, and both the, I guess, business marketing side, but at the same time, the one-on-one basis side of how to engage and how to describe the US soccer fan culture. Because as we know, it has completely evolved, and you can even say in the last 7 to 10 years. So before further ado, before I keep talking, I want to introduce my amazing panel. First, this is Amanda Vandervoort, who is the VP of fan engagement with MLS, but she's also a soccer player, she's a coach. She makes incredible cakes, by the way. If you go on Instagram, you will see some of the most amazing cakes you've ever seen. Okay, we have Aaron.
Vandy Cakes on Instagram.
I'm trying to say
it's not.
Vandy Cakes IG. We also have Aaron Dolores from Black Arrow FC. If you don't know Black Arrow FC, please Google Black Arrow FC right now. They are an incredible brand that basically discusses and engages on soccer and African American, Afro-Caribbean, black culture. They make some incredible content, Black Arrow FC. Mi hermano, the third one over there, is Francisco Terreros, who is, aside from being a certified FIFA agent, he has a tremendous amount of experience when it comes to engaging and growing the Hispanic and Latino fan base in the United States. He's also the CMO of SBX Group. And last but not least is John Guppy, who is the president and founder of Gilt Edge Soccer. He is a guru when it comes not just on understanding soccer culture, but also how to market it, how to grow it, and how to understand it both from a consumption perspective and a one-on-one grassroots level perspective. So this is my panel. I'm very happy. We only have 41 minutes. We have the countdown here. So if it was up to us, we would talk about this stuff for hours, but unfortunately we can't. So I'm going to just kick off straight away with John. I'm going to throw you right into the lines then, John. John, if you can describe to us what is the meaning, or what is right now in 2018, moving in 2019, what is US soccer culture?
Okay, good morning everyone. So what is US
John.
soccer culture? I guess the first thing that I would say is that, I mean, culture is an interesting word. I mean, I think we all kind of intuitively understand what culture means, but if you actually break it down and you actually look it up in, if you go to Google right now, culture is essentially attitudes and behavioral characteristics of a social group. And I think when you process culture through attitudes and behavioral characteristics of soccer in America, I think you pretty quickly come to the conclusion that there is no universal single soccer culture in America. It's just a series of multiple subcultures, if you like, of the sport. And I think that that's a very important point. I mean, I'm a 50-year-old expat, grew up in SO237LZ, a Southampton postcode. Southampton was my team, is my team. I had no choice. My son, who's 18, has grown up in a world where he's been influenced by myself, but he's also been influenced by his peer groups, by his coaches, by his experience playing FIFA. So his attitudes and behavioral characteristics are totally different from mine. If you think about a third-generation Mexican-American living in McAllen, their attitudes and behavioral characteristics as a soccer fan are dramatically different from a first-generation living in LA, going to LAFC, experiencing everything that's part of that culture. You know, a soccer mom in Connecticut that's grown up taking her kids to practice day in, day out, cheers for the red, white, and blue every time the US is playing in a World Cup, men or women. Very different now from her 24-year-old son who's grown up, left, moved to New York, and go to Smithfields every morning to watch the Premier League on a Saturday. So I could go on and on and on, but I think the headline to answer your question is there is no universal culture. It's a set of subcultures influenced by age, but well beyond age. It's about ethnicity, it's about upbringing, it's about interest in the sport. There are so many different ways to connect with soccer, and a whole bunch of other things. Media consumption, I know we'll talk a little bit about, but it's a cosmopolitan world.
John, you got out of that lion's den alive.
There you go.
So before we carry on and talk about specific categories, when we deal with, the Latino audience and the African American audience, I wanted to jump to Amanda first, because if we just focus right now on MLS, right, which is the most diverse league in North America, right? Not just soccer, we're talking NBA, NFL. This is a league that is fully representative of so many different nationalities, cultures, ethnicities. Amanda, when it comes to you and trying to help the league and clubs engage with fans, where does it all begin? How does it start? What's the number one thing on your task list?
For a long time in Major League Soccer, we thought about growing the fan base, and we measured a lot of our success in either revenue or ticket sales, right? And we thought, how do we get more people to consume our product, or even on television ratings, right? But recently, we've taken a look at our fan base and said, actually, let's study the attitudes of our fan. What is it about an MLS fan that drives their hearts and minds to consume, as opposed to measuring the results? Let's instead look at leading indicators of success, like do they love their club? Do they feel attachment to their club? Do they participate in rituals along the way of one of their clubs, of their club that they're connected to? Do they feel passionately about the players and the in-stadium experience? All of these things that drive fandom for our fans in North America, and we know that because they tell us these things, both by their consumption patterns, but also we do a lot of attitudinal research to really understand what makes them tick.
Do you think in the last, perhaps in the last 10 years, 5 years, that sort of information gathering has become more aggressive, mainly because of social media, because it's not just a one-on-one situation where you're just having, access to fans from, being at the stadium or going into the neighborhoods. You can now see what they're like on social, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc.
Yeah.
Is it more aggressive now, do you think?
So I started at Major League Soccer in 2010, and I came in and I helped build the social media strategy at MLS. And at that time, we thought, how can we use social actually to engage with our fans, understand what drives them, understand what their interests are, and we spent a lot of time actually listening. That was the first step, listening what they're saying, see what their consumption patterns are, so that we can create programming that impacts them, that they're interested in. And over that time, since 2010, yes, we've certainly done our fair share of increasing the listening. I would say the tools have gotten so much more powerful that you can go out to actually ask them questions and listen and engage. But we do it both on like understanding the data, the behaviors and patterns that people are showing us by the actions that they're taking, what they're consuming, how they're consuming, what they're interested in. But honestly, we just ask them.
So I want to make this bridge now between what you're saying and Francisco, because when me and you talk, and you talk to me about, Francisco has a tremendous amount of experience when it comes to helping specific clubs, right? So I want you told me a great story when we were having a conversation about Real Salt Lake, right? And the things that you did specifically for the Hispanic and Latino audience, when it was just literally trying to create an official fan base. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that, because now we're able to now specifically focus on one culture or one category of a culture and see how that develops in the league.
Yeah, the first thing we did, and as Amanda mentioned, we got to draw a parallel line to what they already know, which is their Hispanic soccer culture of being fans in Colombia, Mexico, wherever other parts of the world they're from, and drawing that line to MLS, and in my case, at that specific moment was Real Salt Lake. Now that we have that parallel line of, hey, this is soccer, similar soccer that you know, maybe different level to your opinion, but we now draw that line and say, this is soccer in America, and we want you to become fans of our sport. Now, there is an interesting thing, and I know Amanda deals with this a lot in Major League Soccer, of how could we help these supporter groups? How could we help these subcultures within the soccer culture to grow organically, because we don't want to force their hand and say, form an official supporters club. These are your chants. This is what your logo is going to be like. This is what your colors are going to be like, and go do it. But we want it to be organic, because the organic growth is going to be the most successful growth. It's going to be the one that is going to stay with the team forever. And if we look at Real Salt Lake, one of the most predominant supporter groups is the Hispanic one. And if you guys watch Major League Soccer, and if you watch Real Salt Lake, you only hear the Hispanic supporters in the South End chanting. So that's what we did. We drew that parallel line between their current love of Hispanic soccer and to Major League. And as I said, we kind of guided their way into creating that organic movement. We suggested a few names, we organized them, we actually sat down and had an official meeting. We had, the first time, we had 400 season tickets purchased for the Supporters Club, which was unheard of, especially at the time when Major League Soccer was in the organic growth of supporter groups. This was back in 2009, I want to say 2008. And yeah, it's been extremely successful. But again, without that organic growth, it's not going to work.
Listen, we could have a whole panel. I'm going to be very selfish here and tell you that if you're not paying attention to the Hispanic and Latino market when it comes to trying to grow these clubs, LAFC is a perfect example. You know, LA being the county with the most Hispanic and Latino representation in the country. U.S. soccer viewership in 2017, more than 65% of it was thanks to the Hispanic and Latino market, right? So we have to think about these things when it comes to growing. Now, moving away to trying to go ahead.
The LAFC, I think, is a really interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about LAFC.
Yeah, LAFC. When you think about how they've actually, the supporters culture in LAFC and in that club, when they built the club, they thought so much about that supporters club, that supporters group. They invited them to have a seat at the table in what that experience would be like in the stadium. And we know in Major League Soccer that that's our point of differentiation. That's our secret sauce, the supporters culture in the stadium. It's different. It makes us different than the NBA or the NFL or any of these other sports in North America. And to actually invite them to the table to say, what should this experience be like? What do you want the experience to be like? For LAFC, it was a really important part of their process to found that club.
Yeah. Now, I want to now move away from what leagues do and teams do and focus on folks and organizations and platforms that are trying to give the entire country, or at least the entire soccer nation of the United States, see or at least understand the community that perhaps has not been represented well enough. Aaron and I were talking before we all got on the stage, on how sometimes one of the issues when it comes to the African American representation and the soccer culture is that not only are we not telling enough stories, but there are not enough people in the room understanding the culture itself. So when I look at Black Arrow FC and I see the documentary they did with Copa 90 on black culture in Atlanta, black soccer culture in Atlanta, when I look at what you guys did when you went to Panama for the World Cup and understand exactly what it means to a certain community when you look at, you know, the biggest tournament in the world, sports tournament in the world. Aaron, what is your perspective when it comes to the identity of your soccer culture fan? And it doesn't have to be just from, you know, the African American perspective, right, but rather telling these stories in order to grow, not just as a fan, but also as an educator of the game.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, when you're looking at African Americans, the way that we approach it is like we see ourselves as creating new fans to the sport. There actually are a lot of African American fans already, which they just didn't really have a space to connect. And so, like, if you're thinking of culture, you're thinking of fans, like if you look at it in just even physical space, where do black soccer fans go? They end up kind of, you know, one or two going to an Irish pub and kind of hanging out, and that's not necessarily the environment where we're able to like get together. And I think, you know, we kind of focus on creating spaces that talk about things that black people care about, the players, the conversations. So, you know, I think it's really trying to create new fans. And also, you know, what was crazy for me, because I come from outside of the soccer world, is a lot of people were saying, like, well, you know, there's not enough black fans. And for me, what's amazing about soccer is you can create what's not there, and you can kind of connect into the system that's going on. So for me, when people were saying, well, there's not enough black MLS fans, I'm like, well, let's then create them and hit up the MLS. And that's what I did, rather than expecting the MLS to create that itself, right?
Right.
So that's where we come from.
So let me ask you, and I'll actually ask all of you this, what are your thoughts on what PSG did with Jordan, right? Which is like, I have many colleagues in SI who are not soccer fans at all. They specifically mainly focus on the NBA or the NFL. But now, because of that connection and the way that it was told, I mean, listen, it's not necessarily the Jordan label, but it's because, you know, PSG right now is being represented by such a amazing, incredible, talented, young French immigrant as Kylian Mbappe. It has like Paris in itself is such a, you know, multicultural city. So I have all these people at SI who are not soccer fans now, and now they're all about PSG. They can't talk to me. They can't stop talking to me about Kylian Mbappe and Neymar and Ligue 1 and Thierry Henry and what's going on with him and his new manager. And I'm like, you were never a fan in the first place. What were you like? Is that the kind? And actually, I want to ask all of you this from both a marketing perspective and a cultural side. What did you think about that when that creation was made? Is that kind of what you're thinking of when it comes to understanding not just the game, but culture itself and lifestyle?
Yeah, we actually did a big photo shoot for one of our clients, which is World Soccer Shop, on that kit. And so I think it was definitely very big and in the soccer community as far as like fashion and just the authentic, you know, the Jordan brand and Nike. I don't really think it really created new fans in the black community. Right. I think they saw it, but I don't really know that the context was there to really translate, like, what is PSG, who is Mbappe. I mean, you would really be surprised. I talk to black people every day, don't know who Neymar is or Mbappe. So I do think it was really big, but that's one approach, which is kind of let's bring in the very tried and true elements of like what we consider black culture, Jordan, into basketball and smash them together. I think that has an effect. What has a better effect is like really diving into like more depth.
Understanding the community, going in these communities, understanding the people, and not just, you know, creating one or two steps.
Yeah, and it is an important step.
Right.
For sure.
Right. John, go ahead, Francisco.
Sorry, I was going to say on the marketing side, and if there are any brands out in the crowd, please do these kind of things. Because again, as we talk about drawing that bridge between what the consumer already knows, which is sneakers, Jordan, the basketball community, now you're drawing apparel to soccer. I was at a store in Miami yesterday, a sneaker store, and I saw the PSG jersey there. Something that I would have never seen at a sneaker store before. So now we're drawing parallels to what they already know and trying to help them fall in love with a new concept, which is soccer and now basketball and Jordan.
So go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a great example that brings us all the way back to my opening remark. I mean, when you think about culture, culture is a very lofty umbrella. Underneath culture, there is fandom. And fandom is about empathy and camaraderie. So I would argue that what PSG is doing to bring people into the soccer culture isn't necessarily about fandom. It's about finding other reasons to connect, other attitudes and behaviors to embrace. So fandom is just one piece of the story. So if people ask me, you know, what is the prevailing soccer culture in America, I would always go back to the insight that every year we conduct a very holistic survey of soccer fans in America, all different ages, all different ethnic backgrounds. And one of the things we dig into is this duology of soccer, right? It's part of what makes our sport unique and different from other sports. It's a two-sided coin, club and country. So what we learned from our surveys, 49% of soccer fans would say that they care equally about club and country. 40% would say that they care about country. Only more than club. Only 11% would say that they care about club more than country.
Yeah, in Peru, that would be 80%.
So when you step back from that, though, and you say, what is the prevailing culture, not the exclusive, but the prevailing culture in America, it's about nationalism. It's about jingoism. It's about flag waving. That's when most people at scale, and as a marketer, brands want scale, that's when most people are connecting to the sport. So we're not the Olympics, where it only happens every 4 years. It's more regular than that. But again, I think that's when most people are connecting to our sport. I think lifestyle can tie into that. But again, I just think it's another great example of the complexity of what is our culture.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. And it's actually a really good balance in how MLS, I guess, tries to identify that, right? By trying to not just necessarily grow a fan through the city that is in itself, the team, to also, being representative through the player, if it's Carlos Vela or any other player throughout the league, right? But also at the same time, it's also about trying to understand, well, how can we market ourselves? How can we give them a fan experience when they're in the stadiums?
Well, I think what I hear a lot when we're talking about products or about games or any service that we provide, at the end of the day, that's what we're doing, right? But really inspired organizations, when we start with why we're doing it, I think can elevate themselves to a whole nother level of fandom and of creating that love, earning the hearts and minds, right? So if we begin with this concept of why, we start talking about creating a space for people, like Black Arrow FC has come in and they found a space, right? That may not have, the space was always there, but it's the creative people who can come in and fill it because they want to be part of something. The why is being part of this kind of greater movement around soccer, right? And the Hispanic community, this sense of there's a space here for you because, and I'll speak from the MLS perspective, inclusion and diversity and creating space and opportunity for us is something we feel very, very passionately about because soccer is the ultimate connector of people, of cultures, of communities. And so the output of that, maybe it's a consumer product. I'll speak to our relationship with Adidas and the Creators Network that we've built with Adidas and our new partnership going forward is all about allowing fans, allowing people to express their creativity. We do it, through some of our launches with brands in small markets like Mitchell and Ness would be a good example of a consumer products brand that we've partnered with because we can create these niche collections that allow people to express themselves in a really unique and special way. And I think that expressive nature then drives our passion and our connection to the club, to the game in a really special way.
Yeah, I think it's important to take all the boxes, right? From what you said, Aaron, about, it's just one step of many with PSG and Jordan, but it's also about understanding fandom and exactly what it means to be a soccer fan. I always like to think about this comment that I heard a while ago, which is, the question was, you don't get communities, cultures to come to you. You go to them. And then once that happens and once you build a level of trust, that's how you grow, right? There are 2 points I want to hit because we only have 20 minutes. The first one, which I think is something that you brought up, Amanda, when we were having our initial conversation, last week, is, the need to have more of an engaging relationship with the women's game, not just from an international perspective, not just from the U.S. women's national team, which is just a powerhouse, but also just from the very, very beginning, right? Girls all across the country and how we can help them, and help each other sort of represent them better, both as a fan and as a player, whether it's a youth player in an academy or whether it's just somebody that's trying out. What do you think about that?
Well, I think we can't be up here on the stage talking about the culture of soccer fandom and miss out on this entire community we have both around the women's game, which I think is an incredibly special community for us to talk about, incredibly dedicated community and growing rapidly. I think there's a huge space ahead for us to fill and for different communities to come into and fill and fulfill their desire to connect to the game and connect to other people through soccer and the women's game. On the same side, we've got a tremendous opportunity with women who are fans of the men's game as well, right? It's soccer. At the end of the day, what is it that why are people fans of the game? And then how can we deliver more of that through whatever the what is that we're creating, right? The experience in the game, the in-stadium, some of the subculture things that we've been talking about here. So, at the end of the day, regardless of your gender, you're coming to the game, or the gender that you're watching, you're coming to the game for a shared experience. And if we can identify what that shared experience is and create the opportunity for people to come be part of it, we're only going to see it grow.
Yeah. I want to now move on. Put your hand up if you have watched an entire game or almost a whole game on Twitter. Put your hand up if you can say that you are a frequent viewer of soccer on highlights on Twitter or Instagram. Put your hand up if you absolutely are nowhere near close to even watching a game on Twitter. You just watch it on TV and you maybe read a recap on social or on the internet. So if this room was full of Generation Zers or people who are 21 or younger, even 19 or younger, the entire hand will be up almost specifically when it comes to social. So I wanted to kind of at least not conclude it because we have some time, but I do want to touch upon and specifically really talk a lot about media consumption and how the US soccer fan consumes the game, because it's completely different the way to it was 10, 5, I would even say 2 years ago, right? So I kind of just want to have an open debate on this, on how, because I could talk about the way that MLS does it, how you guys do it on video, right? I want to really just ask, what do you see when it comes to, what do you see and what do you see for the future of media consumption for the US soccer fan? And how can we help them as journalists, people that work in marketing and leagues, how can we help them even get that sort of experience even better and better and better?
I have two thoughts. Number one, I want to speak on the Hispanic side, but before I do so, we represent athletes, and as we represent our athletes, the number one thing we tell them is be present in social. The more presence you have on your social media platforms, the higher the ability it is for us as agents to be able to sell their brand to consumer products or services or other products who want to sponsor them. And the larger the reach, the better. Now, there's a caveat to that. If they're not creating content, and our fans are very hungry for good content, and good content is very well perceived. MLS does a fantastic job. I don't know if you guys saw the announcement of the best 11 with the football table.
Right.
Very good.
I thought it was brilliant. Congratulations, kudos to your ex-team of the social media team. They did a fantastic job. But again, the fans are hungry for that. And as brands, as properties, as agencies, we need to be able to cultivate that organic culture of social media. Now, on the Hispanic side, we hosted a survey a couple of months ago, and we found out that 78% of Hispanics are watching soccer as they have their phone on and on social media. So it tells us if we're a brand, if we are one of the brands that are behind our board, one of the sponsors, we want to make sure that we're connecting with these fans through social as the game is going on.
Just to add on the Hispanic Latino side, and this is not just soccer, because this is also my circle. Nobody watches more video on mobile in the United States than the Hispanic and Latino community. Nobody. Like it's tremendous. So there's so much of an opportunity when it comes to video and motion on social.
For sure. And sorry, go ahead. And I wonder how, John, if you've done any research on that specifically and what the numbers, because I bet you they're not any far apart from the 78% of Hispanics. Sorry, Aaron.
No,
Go ahead.
I just say all of our insight would support everything that both of you just said. I mean, it is such an interesting debate. I mean, my culture, my viewing culture is still very much to sit down on a Saturday morning and watch a 2-hour telecast of a Premier League game. And I had this huge argument with my son. I said, did you watch the game this morning? He's like, yeah, I watched it. I'm like, where did you watch it? How did you watch it? This was like 3 years ago. Because he wasn't sitting next to me on the couch, I know that. I mean, he was out and about doing other things. I mean, he essentially had watched the highlights through, GIFs that he'd seen online, memes that had been produced. And in 3 or 4 minutes of time, he had watched the same game that I spent 2 hours sitting on my couch watching. So I went into the office the next week and we had this huge debate about what does watching actually mean in 2018. And it is totally different by generation. Not right, not wrong, it is just different. And I think that's only going to continue. I mean, social and digital consumption, non-linear, is certainly where the younger generation is heading. And that, frankly, is what brands are investing in when they think about soccer. It's not about reaching me, it's about reaching people 35 years and younger. That's why soccer is hot for corporate America. So understanding digital, understanding social, the Hispanic influence within that is huge. I mean, that's the future of the game.
Aaron, I know that you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I guess like the way that from the African American community in the U.S., I think the prevailing thing is that we want to consume this information from other black people.
Right.
And I think that's what's been really important for our brand. And now we're at an age where 20 years ago, you didn't really have a lot of black people that were creating content about soccer or talking about it. And so I think it's now you have all of these brands, lifestyle brands, media brands, Instagram handles that are talking directly to other black folks, and that's where we want to hear the information. I think the awareness of that is, going to keep on growing, right? Like, we don't necessarily want to hear it from ESPN or the MLS. We want to hear it from brands like Black Arrow or individuals that are immersed in the culture. So I think if you are a team or a league or an entity, if you want to reach those consumers, it's not just talking about those consumers' issues, it's having the people that are actually representative of those talking directly to the fans.
Again, going inside the community, having a direct relationship with them in order to understand what is it that they want and what it is that they need, and then offer some kind of content that speaks to what they just asked you or what you got from them.
For sure.
Which is what I see MLS does a lot, to be honest.
It's both of you touched a little bit on the athletes, and Facebook would tell us that athletes or fans generally will follow 6 athletes, 3 clubs, and 1 league on Facebook, right? So you start to think where they're choosing to follow, and that personal human connection to a brand or to a person is critical in how how people are consuming, and at the end of the day, the choice of consumption becomes the challenge for an organization like MLS or any one of our clubs or even our players. How do we create content that drives the choice of consumption and on the platform of choice? So something we think a lot about is delivering the right content at the right time to the right person on the right platform. So we've created LAFC, for example, has a partnership now with YouTube TV and their local media rights.
LAFC is getting a lot of love today.
Deservedly so.
But the league, we do Twitter. We use our Univision rights in English. We have live on Twitter, which has been a phenomenal exploration for us and partnership. But we think about that. Where are fans consuming, and how can we ensure that we're delivering the content they want on that platform when they want it? To your point, John, about 3 minutes of a game versus 2 hours. If they have 3 minutes, I want to fill all 3 of those minutes with MLS.
Yeah.
And I'm going to find where they are, what they're consuming, and what they're interested in, and try and deliver that to them when they're going to see it.
Something that I'm saying that it is growing, but I want more of, is stories about the game from the hyper-local perspective, from the community perspective, and how brands and leagues and clubs can have way more of an impact by telling these stories, because unfortunately it's like a double-edged sword. Like, yes, we have so much access from a social media perspective, but at the same time, because athletes have such a voice on social, and like you said, they follow mainly the athletes, then the team, then the league, right? The problem though is, like, at some point through all this noise, the fan itself gets lost. And I think, and there are many fans that are not necessarily, they may be active on social from a viewer perspective, but not from a creative perspective. So how do we do that? I mean, when I think about your Atlanta doc, like, that's exactly what it was. It was like, let's go there, let's see what they're about, and like, let's try and connect in that perspective. That to me is the most important thing.
Yeah, we did a video called "Why Black Folks Love Arsenal," And
Why do they?
why do that is a good question. And
Yeah, I
I
wanna
think,
know that.
and I think that a lot of people do know that black people love Arsenal, but nobody wanted to really explore why. And so, it wasn't that I had the answer. I went to go research it,
Right.
and then when we started researching it, we started finding all these different reasons. So, like, first was Arsene Wenger being credited for playing, 9 or 10 black players all at the same time, where in the Premier League, maybe teams were only paying 3 or 4. So that was really big for the diaspora of where those players were from. And then, find out that there was a South African guy who started the first supporters group in South Africa that got really big, and then Arsenal became the first team to be aired on television in Africa. So boom, there that is. And then for the U.S. perspective, it was Thierry Henry, because of the time that he played was like, all right, the internet's around, we kind of are, he started to break into our mindset, and then he came to the MLS, so we were like, oh, who's this, famous guy all of a sudden that's coming out here playing the sport that we don't know about? So for us, it was very much, when you talk about the stories, what I thought was crazy was that we were the first ones to research that and document that. I couldn't find one article that actually credited Arsene Wenger as being, the first coach to do this. I couldn't find an article. At the end of the video, we show how Thierry Henry is the first black player in the Premier League to have a statue outside of a stadium. I had to go through Wikipedia, look at every statue at any stadium to make sure that that was the truth. Nobody had really said, nobody had really written that as, or credited him for, being the first black player to have a statue.
How do we fix that, Aaron? It's an open question. How do we fix that? To me, it's from a journalism perspective, it's about, now the storytellers need to be the people in these communities. It can't just be one-sided. I think it's the same in any other sort of perspective, right? Is that,
I think that's a key point. Look, at the end of the day, there's a lot of content noise. Great storytelling still wins.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. And I think you've got to focus on that. I mean, part of what we do as an agency, we represent the Premier League here in the US. We sit behind dedicated channels speaking to the American audience. Part of what we're trying to do is to give the American fan a greater understanding of the experience of going to a game. So Chris Markey, who I think some of you certainly know, is an American living in London. He's a fan. So we brought him into our Instagram channel, and every weekend he gets on a train in London and he goes to Manchester or Liverpool or Southampton, wherever a game is, and he's capturing that experience on Instagram stories. And we have access to the clubs, but it isn't about access. It's about him being a regular fan, taking the train, living the experience, talking to the chip lady outside the stadium, engaging with the program seller. And it is our most successful performing piece of content. Why? It's great stories. Chris is a superb presenter, extremely creative content, and it's living on Instagram stories, which is the platform that the younger audience that we're really trying to speak to is most interested in engaging with. So that cuts through.
Yeah.
But I think, sorry, Amanda, I think that to answer your question and to John's point, it has to be organic. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. For the African American to have a voice within soccer in the US, for the Hispanics, and most importantly, for the women's soccer world to change and reach that equality that we're all seeking to and are hungry for, it needs to be organic. And I think the women have done a fantastic job of making it very organic. The women's US national team leading that charge. LAFC and the Hispanic fan base leading that charge.
Again.
I know. The African Americans leading that charge. Again, it needs to be organic. It needs to be within the subcultures, within our soccer culture, for it to grow and have that original content that people are hungry for.
Yeah, Amanda, I know that you wanted to.
Yeah, I want to add, I think I couldn't agree more that great content always wins. I also think there's a special place today when we think about this new and evolving younger generation. We're talking about Gen Z, or we're talking about how do we capture the next soccer fan? And I think innovation also wins. So we're in a space where MLS, we're thinking a lot about what is the next technology, what is the next platform, what's beyond Instagram,
Yeah.
and where do we go from here? And so we have a partnership with RGA. Gary Stevenson, our president, spoke about it yesterday, where we're identifying startups around the world and investing in this concept of trialing new platforms and new programs to think, will our fans connect in new and different and interesting ways? And creating augmented reality experiences or virtual reality experiences and leveraging this new era and medium of new technology. Yes, you need great content as part of those experiences, right? But Instagram is today, and the question is, where do we go? What's tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that the main concept that I've understood from everything that we have discussed is three things to me. One is the need to go to these places, to these communities, and understand better the fan. Maintain a level of trust from both a consumption perspective to a league perspective to a marketing perspective. And the third one, which is perhaps the most important one, which you literally just brought up, which is what's next, and how we can go with them into that what's next territory, right? Look at this, less than 3 minutes. I want to thank John, Hermano Francisco, Aaron, Amanda. Buy her cakes, they're incredible. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.